Chapter 1. You Count 2, A Commonsense Guide to Happier Parenting. We've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas. Ned Flanders' beatnik mother on The Simpsons. Soon after you announce that you're going to be a parent, the hazing begins. The nice people say, your lives are going to change, with a knowing grin. The not-so-nice chuckle about dirty diapers and sleepless nights. Once, when my wife and I were strolling our twin infants, we overheard a passing jogger tell her friend, "Now there's a reason to shoot yourself." Babies are very cute, and people are pretty superficial. Yet many of us hear baby and think, misery. It's not just that we believe that kids happen to make their parents miserable. We perceive parental misery as inevitable. If you become a parent, you have to kiss your independence and free time goodbye, and resign yourself to 18 years of hard labor. Popular perceptions are mostly wrong. Today's typical parents push themselves so hard that you'd expect them to be miserable. But they aren't. Some evidence suggests that kids make people slightly less satisfied with their lives, but even that depends on how you ask. By and large, parents feel fine. In any case, once you know how laborious modern parenting has become, making parents happier is like finding hay in a haystack. Parents, how are they doing? Count Olaf rubbed his hands together as if he had been holding something revolting instead of an infant. Lemony Snicket, a series of unfortunate events, the bad beginning. Is parenthood good for you? The simple, stubborn answer is, it must be, otherwise people wouldn't do it. When you're deciding how many kids to have, however, this answer is unhelpful. People make mistakes. Some of their choices bring them unhappiness and regret. If you want to measure how parents are doing, you need to take human error seriously. 3 main approaches fit the bill: studies of customer satisfaction, studies of overall happiness, and studies of momentary happiness. Customer satisfaction. To learn whether a consumer expects to like a purchase, you only need to find out whether he bought it. To learn whether a consumer really likes a purchase, however, you need to find out whether he'd make the same decision over again. If so, he's a satisfied customer. If not, he's got buyer's remorse. After you try a restaurant, hire a mechanic, or upgrade your computer, it's hard not to weigh your experience on the scale of customer satisfaction. Before you try a restaurant, hire a mechanic, or upgrade your computer, it's wise to check the customer satisfaction of people like you. In practice, do parents feel like their kids were a good deal, or end up with buyer's remorse? The book, Do I Want to Be a Mom, ominously warns that having a child for unhealthy reasons could cause a lifetime of disappointment in yourself and with your child. But in 1976, Newsday commissioned the highest quality survey ever conducted on the subject, and found buyer's remorse was awfully rare. When asked, if you had it to do over again, would you or would you not have children? 91% of parents said they would have children all over again. Only 7% said they wouldn't. You might object that people merely rationalize whatever decision they made, but the best available survey finds that non-buyer's remorse is common. In 2003, Gallup asked childless adults over the age of 40, if you had to do it over again, how many children would you have, or would you not have any at all? Over 2/3 of the people without kids confessed regret. Bottom line, a supermajority of parents want every kid they've got. That's part of the magic of having kids. Even parents of unplanned children often confess, I can't imagine my life without them. The magic of not having kids, in contrast, is elusive. The childless can readily imagine being parents, and by the time they're in their 40s, most prefer this fantasy to their reality. Overall happiness. In terms of customer satisfaction, parenthood does well. Few parents want their money back, and most of the childless wish they bought back when they had their chance. But customer satisfaction isn't everything. There's also happiness, how people feel about their lives. Who's happier, people with kids or people without? If you know a few sunny parents, it's tempting to conclude that kids are the path to happiness. If your neighbor has a short fuse and a house full of hellions, it's hard to believe flowery talk about the joys of family life. To move beyond our own little worlds, We need statistics. Strange as it sounds, high-quality surveys have spent decades asking all sorts of people, "How happy are you?" On the surface, people with kids are indeed happier than those without. On closer look, however, parenthood is slightly depressing. People with kids are more likely to be older, married, and church-going. All three traits, age, marriage, church attendance, predict greater happiness. Once you adjust for these patterns, happiness falls as the number of children rises. The unhappy effect of kids is robust. You can crunch the numbers for months, and your computer will stubbornly continue to tell you that happiness and number of offspring move in opposite directions. Before you join the "children make us miserable" chorus, however, it's worth staring at the numbers more closely. The negative effect of kids on happiness is robust but small. In the General Social Survey, a massive, decades-long study of Americans, every child makes you about 1 percentage point less likely to call yourself very happy. The difference is real, but you need a statistical microscope to detect it. Married people, in contrast, are 18 percentage points more likely to be very happy. If you're married with children, you're far more likely to be happy than if you're single and childless. Taken too literally, the statistics imply that married couples require over a dozen kids to feel worse than childless singles. Also striking, the main hit to parental happiness comes from child number 1. Otherwise, identical people who have one child instead of none are 5.6 percentage points less likely to be very happy. But once you've got a child, enlarging your family is practically painless. Whenever parents install another child seat in the family car, their chance of being very happy falls by a barely perceptible 0.6 percentage points. Intuitively, people sharply rearrange their lives with the arrival of their first child. They lose privacy and stop going out Saturday nights. When more children come along, however, parents' lifestyle stays about the same. In the movie Saved, a pregnant teenager named Mary learns that cancer and pregnancy have common symptoms and suddenly feels hopeful. "Please be cancer, please be cancer," she frantically pleads. When happiness researchers talk about kids, they often sound like Mary. In Gross National Happiness, Arthur Brooks, now president of the American Enterprise Institute, jokes, "There are many things in a parent's life that bring great joy. For example, spending time away from their children. When you look at the numbers, the picture's much brighter. If you compare two otherwise identical people, but only one has kids, smart money says that the childless one will be only a tad happier." Momentary happiness. Can you trust what people say about their overall happiness? On such an abstract question, answers might depend more on how we're supposed to feel than how we really feel. To get around this problem, some happiness researchers change gears. Instead of asking subjects how they feel overall, they ask them how they spent their day and how each of their activities made them feel. How does parenting measure up? The most famous work along these lines, Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman and co-authors' study of working moms, appeared in Science in 2004. According to second-hand reports, Kahneman and company discovered that taking care of kids is virtually the low point of the day. A piece in Time announced that an act of parenting makes most people about as happy as an act of housework. The Economist added, "When researchers ask parents what they enjoy, it turns out that they prefer almost anything to looking after their children. Eating, shopping, exercising, cooking, praying, and watching television were all rated more pleasurable than watching the Bratz." Popular summaries of the original paper turn out to be awfully misleading. Here is how moms actually rated their enjoyment of their day's activities on a scale from 0, not at all, to 6, very much. Intimate relations 5.10. Socializing 4.59. Relaxing 4.42. Pray/worship/meditate 4.35. Eating 4.34. Exercising 4.31. Watching TV 4.19. Shopping 3.95. Preparing food 3.93. On the phone 3.92. Napping 3.87. Taking care of my children 3.86. Computer/email/internet 3.81. Housework 3.73. Working 3.62. Commuting 3.45. As far as happiness researchers go, Arthur Brooks is pro parenthood. Yet even he looks at these very numbers and concludes that women enjoy almost everything more than they enjoy taking care of their kids. But childcare comes in 12th out of 16 activities, and easily beats the most time-consuming activity of the day, working. And there is virtually a six-way tie between shopping, preparing food, talking on the phone, napping, taking care of children, and computer use. Last, notice that the top 7 activities, from sex, intimate relations, to watching TV, are all forms of recreation. As far as work-like activities go, enjoyment of childcare is slightly above average. If the Kahneman study has a big social message, it's not that kids are a disaster for happiness. It's that women enjoy taking care of their children more than working outside the home. The only thing women like less than being at their jobs is getting to and from their jobs. Childcare isn't a picnic, but it beats a paying job. In Stumbling on Happiness, psychologist Daniel Gilbert contrasts our dreams about children with the harsh reality of parenting. Our dreams. When people think about their offspring, either imagining future offspring or thinking about current ones, they tend to conjure up images of cooing babies smiling from their bassinets, adorable toddlers running higgledy-piggledy across the lawn, handsome boys and gorgeous girls playing trumpets and tubas in the school marching band, successful college students going on to have beautiful weddings, satisfying careers, and flawless grandchildren whose affections can be purchased with candy. The harsh reality: although parenting has many rewarding moments, the vast majority of its moments involve dull and selfless service to people who will take decades to become even begrudgingly grateful for what we are doing. After you sift through the evidence, Gilbert's harsh reality looks more like a recurring nightmare. The not-so-harsh reality is that parents are far better off than non-parents by the standard of customer satisfaction, and only slightly worse off by the standard of personal happiness. Married couples with big families are much happier than childless singles. Childcare is a form of work, but it's nice work if you can get it. Toil and trouble. A week in the life of today's typical parent. A British nanny must be a general. The future empire lies within her hands, and so the person that we need to mold the breed is a nanny who can give commands. Mary Poppins. When he was a boy, my dad rode his bike all over downtown Los Angeles. My friends and I had more supervision, but our moms still got us out of their hair by ordering us to play outside until dinner. My mom kindly let me read in my room, but the philosophy was the same. Entertaining myself was my job, not hers. Today, I almost never see kids playing outside without a watchful parent, and several have told me they wouldn't have it any other way. Parents spend their weekends bringing their children to activities I never heard of when I was a kid. Taekwondo classes, Pokemon tournaments, Mandarin immersion. These are just anecdotes, but they fit the systematic research on the question, what do people do all day? Sociologists have measured how Americans spend their minutes for over 4 decades. Their favorite tool is the time diary. You contact a random sample of Americans and ask them to walk you through their previous day. When did you wake up? What did you do then? What happened next? Questions continue until the respondent tells you when he went to bed. Methodically reliving your day makes it hard to stray far from the truth. According to time diaries, modern parents spend an incredible amount of time taking care of their kids. As expected, dads do a lot more than they used to. Since 1965, when the average dad did only 3 hours of childcare per week, we've more than doubled our efforts. Given how little dads used to do, though, doubling wasn't hard. What's amazing is the change in the typical mother's workload. Today's mom spends more time taking care of children than she did in the heyday of the stay-at-home mom. Back in 1965, when the typical mom was a housewife, she spent 10 hours a week specifically focusing on her children's needs. By 2000, this number had risen to 13 hours a week. This happened despite the fact that today's moms are much more likely to work outside the home, despite the fact that moms have fewer kids, and despite the fact that dads are a lot more helpful. Everything suggests that modern moms would put in fewer hours than ever, except the facts. One pattern hasn't changed. Stay-at-home moms spend more time with their kids than working moms. However, both kinds of moms try harder than they used to. Stay-at-home moms went from about 11 hours per week in 1975 to 17 hours per week in 2000. Working moms went from 6 hours per week in 1975 to 11 hours per week in 2000. Modern working moms spend as much time caring for their kids as stay-at-home moms did 30 years ago. These weekly totals sound low because they define child care narrowly. Reading a book on the couch while my sons fight Playmobil wars wouldn't count, even if I occasionally urged them to play nice. When parents get full credit for multitasking, measured child care shoots up about 50%. But however you measure, the main patterns remain. The average dad has roughly doubled his effort. The average mom spends more time taking care of her kids than she did when the average mom was a housewife. When people learn about these patterns, they're usually relieved. But why? If the statistics are right, it's clear why raising kids feels like a chore. By the standards of the 60s, modern dads do enough childcare to pass for moms, and modern moms do enough childcare to compete for Mother of the Year. Kid time has crowded out couple time. Parents in 2000 spent about 25% fewer hours with each other than they did in 1975. To use an expression I often heard during my childhood, parents are working their fingers to the bone. Considering how much time we spend caring for our kids, the real surprise is that parents' happiness deficit isn't a lot bigger. How to be a happier parent, a primer. It is better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. Chinese proverb. If I'm merely cementing your pre-existing reservations about children, hold on. Modern parenting has turned kids into a heavy burden. But it's not kids that changed, it's us. We frequently meet demands that our elders would have rejected out of hand. I'm not your chauffeur. We even invent demands on our children's behalf. Moem, I don't want to take karate. Why can't parents learn to say no, or at least learn to take no for an answer? If you want to make parents happier, it's tempting to simply turn back the clock to the more relaxed standards of the 60s or 70s. But the smarter approach is to look at parents' lives with a modern eye and target the parts that are least useful and least pleasant. Of course, stop doing stuff with big costs and small benefits is good advice whether or not you're a parent. It's on par with buy low, sell high. But comparing costs and benefits is especially helpful for parents because so many avoid it out of the mistaken sense that only bad parents would do it. As a result, there is plenty of low-hanging fruit to pick. When my twins were infants, our baby monitor was a godsend. If the kids were crying for food or a change, we wanted to know ASAP. Without the monitor, we would have endlessly visited their room to double-check their status. The monitor let us relax, secure in the knowledge that we'd know as soon as our babies needed us. As our boys got older, the tears tapered off. By the time they were 2, my wife and I would tuck them in, then head downstairs to watch TV. The baby monitor was still broadcasting, but instead of cries, we heard laughs. The twins were joking when they were supposed to be sleeping. We'd start 24 and hope for the laughter to die down. 10 minutes later, I'd pause the show, lumber upstairs, and quiet the troublemakers. My first warning rarely took. The aggravating cycle often took an hour. Then one great night, my wife and I found a way out. We turned off the monitor. Our evenings immediately improved. After tuck-in, we could relax, and the boys still felt fine in the morning. The experience taught us a valuable lesson. We, not our kids, were causing our own aggravation. Our sons never asked us to spy on them. The monitor was a good idea at first. Our mistake was to listen long after it stopped making sense. Turning off the baby monitor did not revolutionize our lives. Yet small changes add up, and they're not hard to find. Review your most unpleasant chores. How many could you safely scale back? Review your least useful chores. How many could you safely forget? Don't look for solutions for your problems. You'll rarely find them. Look instead for sensible adjustments to brighten your days. Before you do something for your child, Try asking yourself 3 questions. 1. Do I enjoy it? 2. Does my child enjoy it? 3. Are there any long-run benefits? I don't pretend to have adjustments that work for everyone, but 4 great places to start looking are sleep, activities, discipline, and supervision. Sleep. Sleep deprivation is new parents' leading complaint. Part of the problem is unavoidable biology. Newborns need small, frequent feedings, but infants' needs explain only a sliver of what parents endure. Kids often refuse to sleep through the night for years, long enough to turn their parents into zombies. A sliver of kids stubbornly refuses to sleep. Normally, though, the root cause of sleeplessness is overparenting. What do people do when their child cries instead of sleeping? If their baby isn't hungry, thirsty, or in need of a fresh diaper, they try attention. The child gets picked up, rocked, and serenaded. He calms down until his parents put him back to bed, then cries louder than ever. What do you expect if he can avoid sleep and get attention merely by carrying on? As Joshua Gans writes in Parentonomics, sleep is a negotiation. We want sleep while the baby wants attention. There is an inherent conflict here. The screams of a baby are like an offer. I'll stop screaming if you give me some attention. And it is not a vague offer. Give the baby attention, and the crying stops. After only a few goes, a little baby can train its parents nicely. You could argue that nighttime coddling is bad for kids because they'll be tired the next day. Perhaps, but they enjoy the appeasement and can catch up on their sleep anytime they please. The clear losers are the parents. And who's to say that the child's reign of terror won't go on night after night? If parents only cared about themselves, the obvious solution to sleeplessness would be to shut the child's bedroom door and let the troublemaker cry himself out. Sleep researchers call this systematic ignoring. It works, but it's harsh. Parents count too doesn't mean kids don't count at all. Fortunately, there are intermediate options. The Ferber method, let the child cry for a few minutes, comfort him, repeat, is the most famous. And it works wonders, too. When our twins were about a month old, my wife and I invented our own version. By the time they were 3 months old, both slept through the night. I want to believe that our approach was better for us and them, but I'm not convinced. During cry time, the twins were 2 unhappy campers. Still, we're raising their baby brother the same way. While a coddling regime might mean an extra daily hour of fun for our son, it also means an extra dozen daily hours of sluggishness for us. Getting your kids to sleep through the night is crucial for livable parenting. If you want better than livable, you'll mandate regular naps until your kids are old enough to quietly entertain themselves for an hour. I don't know how bad it is for toddlers not to nap. Many seem fine either way. What I do know is that if they don't, it is bad for parents. Nap time gives parents of young children quiet time to catch up on their work, relax, or take a nap of their own. Granted, mandatory naps can't go on forever. Parents should be looking for sensible adjustments, not solutions. Still, parents who take their own interests into account will retain a daily nap for a year or 2 more than their child needs. We kept the twins on a daily napping schedule until they were almost 6. By that point, they were mature enough to switch from nap time to quiet time. Instead of a 2-hour nap, they have to keep down the noise for the same duration. For the twins, quiet time is a big improvement. For us, it's a distinction without a difference. Activities. To the naive, activities are a great way for parents to get a break. Why not let their soccer coach mind them for a while? But in reality, kids' activities are a time pit for parents. Kids usually need a ride, so the parent has to take them where they're going, wait around, then take them home. If mom didn't need a break before, she'll need one by the time the car pulls back into the garage. Chauffeuring kids to activities has always been a little stressful for parents. For today's typical parent, it's more exhausting than ever, because kids have so many structured activities. These excesses would be bad enough if parent sacrifices actually made their children happy. But parents often reluctantly admit that their kids don't even enjoy their activities. This is no surprise. How would you like it if an authority figure enrolled you in a weekly piano lesson? The first step to happier parenting is to abandon recreation, enjoyed by neither parent nor child. As Lenore Skenazy advises in Free Range Kids, find one thing you've pushed your kids to do that they don't really like and aren't good at, and let them drop it. Be prepared for cheers. Step 2 is to cut more activities, starting with the ones that parents dislike the most and kids like the least. You don't have to drive your toddler to story time on a rainy day. He can just skip a class. When parents hear this advice, they soon wonder, what are my kids supposed to do with all their extra free time? Notice, moms and dads don't ask how they'll spend their extra free time. On that front, they're full of ideas. When they imagine their kids with idle hands, however, the devil's playground swiftly comes to mind. Kids have plenty of wholesome stay-at-home options. Many simply want more time to play with their toys. Now that my twins are in school, they feel like they're losing touch with their Playmobiles. The problem with kindergarten, they soon announced, is that it takes away all your time. Other kids would get some fresh air in the backyard. You don't need a team to exercise. Still, parents worry that kids will spend most of their newfound free time on television, video games, and other plug-in babysitters. Their suspicions are almost certainly correct. If you give mature adults extra free time, many relax in front of the TV or computer. It would be amazing if childish children didn't do the same. But what's wrong with that? Electronic babysitters are a vital component of cultural literacy. I hope my kids grow up to know both The Simpsons and Shakespeare. In any case, electronic babysitters are undeniably a lot of fun for kids, and, as a cheap, dependable substitute for a human babysitter, a blessing for parents, too. So why the hostility? It's as if parents think that anything that feels good for every member of the family must be bad. I'm not advising people to put their kids in front of the television and forget about them. My wife and I don't let ours watch more than an hour or two a day, because we don't want them to miss out on the other joys of childhood. I'm merely suggesting pragmatic adjustments in the way that families spend their time. If parents feel exhausted by their kids' busy schedule, they should trim a few hours of activities from their week. Even if their kids spend most of their extra hours on TV and video games, the parents will be happier, and the kids will probably be happier too. The case for fewer family activities is especially strong when you've got teenagers. Parents and teens habitually complain about each other. Teens say parents are mean and controlling. Parents say teens are hostile and ungrateful. These mutual recriminations suggest that parents and teenagers spend too much time together. When your teenager feels like a prisoner and treats you like a jailer, less is more. Family vacations are another nightmare for millions of parents. Why pay thousands of dollars for the worst week of your year? Children may appreciate their parents' sacrifices of cash and sanity, but don't count on it. The typical kid is not a fan of long car rides and museums. Most pathetic of all is when aggravated parents let down their masks and scream, giving their kids truly ugly memories that last a lifetime. Fewer days and shorter distances would improve most family vacations, but my personal favorite is the parents-only getaway. If kids prevent their parents from enjoying a trip and won't appreciate it themselves, including them is a bad idea. Getaways are mainly an option for families with helpful grandparents. But many parents stubbornly turn down their elders' repeated offers to watch the kids for a few days. They successfully raised you to adulthood. What are you so worried about? If you insist on family bonding, try a staycation. Instead of driving for hours and cramming the whole family into a tent or hotel room, stay home together. Every day, you enjoy your regional attractions. Then relax in your own home while your kids relax in their own rooms. Staycations are ideal for residents in major tourist areas. I grew up in Los Angeles but never saw Hollywood's Walk of Fame until I was in my 30s. Given the hazards of the family vacation, however, a staycation is worth a try even in the middle of nowhere. Discipline. Parents have always made excuses for discipline. This is for your own good. This is going to hurt me more than it hurts you. These excuses may sound phony, but today's typical parents actually buy their own propaganda. Benefit to the child is almost the only socially acceptable justification for discipline. As a result, Parents use a lot less discipline than they would if they counted their own interests. I can't forget the day I saw a father allow his 5-year-old daughter to punch and kick him. She struck hard and often. I felt like I was watching a villain in a bad kung fu movie called Fists and Feet of Fury. The dad outweighed his daughter by over 100 pounds, but all he did to defend himself was say, Now, there. You could blame the dad for retarding his daughter's social skills, but that's arguable. Her social skills were very impressive for a 5-year-old. She didn't try to punch or kick anyone else at the party. She knew that different people have different rules, and only her parents would endure her abuse. What's not arguable is that the father was hurting himself with bad parenting. He had the bruises to prove it. Parents who want a happier life need to rethink the justification for discipline. The welfare of the child is one legitimate goal. If your toddler runs into the street, zero tolerance really is for his own good. But the child's welfare is only the beginning. Another legitimate function of discipline is to keep the child from abusing the people around him, and no one is more susceptible to a child's abuse than his own parents. Your kid knows where you live, you're stuck with him, and he knows it. He also knows that you love him, so you're inclined to forgive him his trespasses. Armed with these advantages, your child can make your life awful, unless you stand up for yourself. The smart disciplinary adjustment to make is just the wisdom of the ages: clarity, consistency, and consequences. Adopt firm rules, clearly explain the penalties for breaking the rules, and impose promised penalties to the letter. If your child punches or kicks you, you've got to tell your child that it's against the rules, and that the punishment for transgression is, say, 1 day without television. Every time your child breaks the rule, harden your heart and impose the punishment. Clear, consistent punishment isn't foolproof, and some kids are tougher to crack than others, but it beats being a punching bag. If you're skeptical of the wisdom of the ages, there is solid experimental evidence in its favor. When parents ask psychologists to help control their children's disobedience, tantrums, and aggression, psychologists often respond by training the parents. They call it behavioral parent training, but it's clarity, consistency, and consequences by another name. Researchers have run dozens of experiments to see whether behavioral parent training really works. It does. Suppose you have a list of parents who want help with their problem children. You randomly train some and leave the rest on a waiting list. Experiments typically find that the average child of the trained parents behaves better than 80% of the children of the parents on the wait list. The main weakness of the training is parental backsliding. Once parents tire of clarity, consistency, and consequences, their children go back to their old tricks. Discipline is like dieting. It works when tried. When you're trying to improve your kid's behavior, other authorities, teachers, grandparents, nannies, and so on, often frustrate you by undermining your rules. What good is it to practice the 3 C's if no one else does? Selfishly speaking, plenty of good. Kids quickly discover that different people have different rules. If the typical teenager treated his friends the way he treats his parents, he wouldn't have any friends. A central criticism of behavioral parent training is that it only improves children's behavior in the home. But an optimist would draw a different lesson. Parental discipline is enough to make children treat their parents decently. If other authorities in your child's life have lower standards, that's largely their problem. One of the human child's charming traits, by the way, is responsiveness to token punishments. You can scare kids straight by credibly threatening to take away one night's TV or one dinner's dessert. In fact, these wrist slaps often turn out to be overkill. When our twins were infants, I watched Super Nanny in disbelief. The Super Nanny, Joe Frost, punished monstrous children merely by putting them in the naughty corner, and their behavior sharply improved. Once my boys got a little older, I was shocked to discover that the naughty corner works. At least in my family, 2 minutes of mild humiliation was enough to deter 9 out of 10 toddler tantrums. When I praise discipline then, don't imagine that I'm Captain Von Trapp from The Sound of Music. I never spank my kids. I don't even raise my voice to them. If I did, their behavior would probably be better still. But as I've said, parents count too doesn't mean kids don't count at all. If I can sharply improve my quality of life by mildly punishing my kids, I'll do so without apology. If cruelty is the price of slightly better behavior, I'm not buying. Supervision. When you Google "worst mom in America," journalist Lenore Skenazy is the first hit. Her offense? Letting her 9-year-old son ride the New York City subway by himself. The boy had a safe trip, enjoyed a taste of independence, and made it home in about an hour. Yet when Skenazy bragged about his odyssey on television, viewers were horrified, and she soon won her infamous title. Needless to say, Skenazy wears it as a joke. She wants to keep her progeny safe, too. She let her son ride the subway alone because he had years of practice, and she knew the safety statistics. The point of her book, Free-Range Kids, is that children can handle, and would enjoy, a lot more independence than modern parents allow. All this suggests another judicious way for parents to give themselves a break. More independent kids equal less parental supervision. If your kids want to stretch their wings, you don't feel like supervising them, and everyone stays safe, go for it. Even if your kids lobby against more independence for themselves, there's nothing wrong with balancing their mild separation anxiety against your desire for a little more space. There are many thoughtful ways to safely cut back on parental supervision. No one raises free-range babies, but you don't have to play with them during every waking moment. They often cry for attention because it works. If you have toddlers, gate off a small danger zone, then child-proof the rest of your home until you're comfortable letting them play on their own for an hour. Once you have school-age kids, chances to safely cut supervision are all around. Let them use public restrooms on their own, stay home alone while you go to the store, or watch the Chipmunks movie in Theater 3 while you enjoy a real movie in Theater 6. Letting your 8-year-old out of your sight may feel dangerous, but as we'll see later on, popular fears of abduction are almost pure fantasy. Driving your 3rd grader to the store is vastly more dangerous than leaving him home without a bodyguard. If you're looking for more creative ways to supervise less, Skenazy's Free-Range Kids is a goldmine. A few favorites. Volunteer to watch the kids who are waiting with your own kid for soccer to start, or school to open, whatever. Explain to the other parents that you're offering them a little free time. If they say no, ask them to watch your kid. Think of one activity you did as a child that you are unwilling to let your own sweetheart do at the same age, babysitting, biking to a friend's, and make a list of 20 things that could conceivably go wrong. If there are any worries that strike you as realistic, help your child prepare for them. Have your middle schooler start doing a task that you would normally do, like taking the dog to the vet or buying the groceries for dinner. Policing kids' books, shows, movies, and games for inappropriate content is also usually a waste of time. Scariness is one thing. If your kid won't be able to sleep after he watches Paranormal Activity, don't let him. But remember, action is not horror. Violent movies rarely scare kids if the good guys win. If your children imitate bad behavior they see on TV, denying access is poetic justice. Otherwise, relax. Whatever you do, your kids will see and hear it all long before it's age-appropriate. In praise of throwing money at your problems. The day after my wife and I got married, we prepared for a cross-country drive from Los Angeles to our new home in Princeton, New Jersey. Though we were eager for the honeymoon to begin, I spent 4 hours at my in-laws' house struggling to change our Volkswagen's oil. Meanwhile, my wife inventoried the wedding presents, including thousands of dollars in cash and checks. Yet it never crossed my mind to take $20 out of the gift box and drive to Jiffy Lube. By the time the oil was changed and the car was packed, it was midnight, and I was ready to bang my head against the windshield. The oil change incident wasn't merely a failure of common sense. We were moving to Princeton so I could finish my PhD in economics, yet the well-known fact that money can be exchanged for goods and services slipped my mind. My only excuse has to be some kind of post-wedding dementia, but at least I learned a lifelong lesson. Money can buy happiness if you spend it the right way. When you're tired, stressed, or disgusted, outsourcing your worst hours of childcare can make your whole day. This may sound like let them eat cake, but parents don't need a lot of money to escape a lot of misery. Most Americans can afford a few more hours of babysitting a week. Even if the money only purchases a little extra free time on the weekend, the benefits are large, because the last hours of childcare are the hardest, and many parents can afford much more. In 2005, over 15% of American families earned six-figure incomes. That's roughly 18 million households with the income to hire a lot of help, up to and including a full-time nanny. One day, this could be you, if it isn't already. $100,000 a year might not seem that rich to you, but it's a question of priorities. Families earning six figures have plenty of fat to cut. If you have 2 kids, a part-time nanny will probably do more for your quality of life than a new car. If you're feeling too short on cash to hire help, there are plenty of ways to cut the cost. A nanny doesn't need fluent English or a driver's license to provide loving care for your children. It's a little less convenient, but costs half as much. And before long, your kids will be fluent translators. Now that you've got your wallet out, consider a few other ways to turn your money into happiness. The obvious ones: spend freely on takeout meals, electronic babysitters, and cleaning services. They're a tired, stressed, disgusted parent's best friends. Less obviously, and more controversially, when you want your kids' help, nag them less and reward them more. When I was a boy, my mom paid me a penny for every 10 weeds I pulled. When I complained, she'd object, "You're lucky to get paid at all. You live here and you should contribute." Just imagine how persuasive her lecture was. Under my mom's slave wage regime, she had to heavily nag me to lift a finger. Now that I'm a dad, my mom's penny-wise labor policies still strike me as pound foolish. Why should parents drive themselves crazy squeezing free labor out of their kids? Your boss doesn't have to nag you to do your job. Instead, he makes you an offer, and if you don't like it, you can quit. This seemingly cold system is far more harmonious in practice than from each according to his ability to each according to his need. Don't pay your children for every little thing, but when you want to give your kids a major project or a recurring chore, make it worth their while. Trading favors works well, especially for younger children. If you eat your dinner without complaining, you get dessert. You can watch TV after you clean up your toys, and "I'll give you a ride to the mall if you put the dishes away" are all good options. At the same time, there's absolutely nothing wrong with paying cash. You're not trying to raise a communist. If generous terms fall on deaf ears, you're probably giving your kids too much for free. Handing out goodies to your kids just because is fun, but you shouldn't expect a child with a $1.40 weekly allowance to be hungry for work. Instead of redoubling your nagging, turn a portion of your welfare into workfare. Using money to make parenting easier isn't just doable, it's done. High-income parents actually seem to buy themselves less regret and more happiness. In the Newsday survey, only 4% of the richest parents regretted having children, compared to 13% of the poorest. In the general social survey, richer parents have a much smaller happiness deficit. In the poorer half, otherwise identical people with 1 child instead of 0 are 6.6 percentage points less likely to be very happy. In the richer half, parents' happiness deficit is only 3.6 percentage points. You might look at these results and conclude, don't have kids until you are financially secure. Not bad advice, assuming fertility problems are far in the future. However, I'm making a totally different point. Rich parents successfully use money to make parenting easier, and the rest of us can profit by their example. Protecting your kids from secondhand stress. If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. On the surface, the saying reminds us to be nice to mom, but there's a deeper meaning. Beware of sacrifices for the good of the family. If you don't feel like taking your kids on a ski trip, your bad mood could easily ruin the outing. On balance, your kids might be happier if you said no. They'll feel disappointed, but at least they won't be traumatized when you scream at them for changing the radio station. By the same logic, your child might be happier if you saw more movies alone on your way home from work. While you'd spend a little less time with your family, you'd have a better attitude during your time together. Many parents worry about the dangers of secondhand smoke, but few consider the dangers of secondhand stress. If you make yourself miserable to do a special favor for your child, he might enjoy it. But if he senses your negative feelings, he might come to share them. Secondhand stress is one of kids' leading grievances. In the Ask the Children survey, researcher Ellen Galinsky interviewed over 1,000 kids in grades 3 to 12 and asked parents to guess how kids would respond. One key question: if you were granted one wish to change the way that your mother's father's work affects your life, what would that wish be? Kids' answers were striking. They rarely wished for extra face time with their parents. They were much more likely to wish their parents would be less tired and stressed. The parents were completely out of touch. Virtually none guessed that kids would use their one wish to give their parents a better attitude. Galinsky also asked kids to grade their parents' performance on a dozen dimensions. Overall, parents did pretty well. Moms had an overall GPA of 3.14 versus 2.98 for dads. A majority of moms and dads got A's for appreciating me for who I am, making me feel important and loved, and being able to attend important events in my life. Anger management was parents' Achilles heel. More than 40% of kids gave their moms and dads a C, D, or F for controlling his/her temper when I do something that makes him/her angry, the very worst marks on their report card. When I preach that parents count too, there's a lot of pushback. I feel like I'm on The Simpsons and Helen Lovejoy's shouting, "Won't somebody please think of the children?" However, if you not only think of the children but listen to them, you'll end up following a lot of my advice. Kids may not realize that they can make themselves unhappy by demanding too much from their parents. Parents, however, should be mature enough to protect their kids from secondhand stress. When you can't help your child with a sincere smile, it's often kinder to gently refuse. From happier parents to bigger families. Parental unhappiness is not a complete myth. The average parent is slightly less happy than the average non-parent. My reaction is not to deny the facts, but to ask, why settle for average? Parents put an enormous amount of time and money into their children, and in terms of happiness, they almost break even. If you're trying hard and almost succeeding, the natural response is not to give up, but to rethink your strategy. With a little insight and creativity, parents can sharply improve their experience. A dad once joked to me, "The first kid takes 99% of your free time, the second kid takes the remaining 1%. The one-liner seems to affirm the inevitability of parental sacrifice, but actually does the opposite. How can the second child be so much less work than the first? Because parents reallocate their time away from the firstborn to care for the baby. The implication: the elder child never really required 99% of their time in the first place. The parents could have given themselves a break all along, because much of their toil was superfluous. If all my book does is make you a happier parent, I'll be satisfied. Still, I want to push my luck, to convince you to be the happier parent of a larger family. The argument is simple. Once you adjust the kind of parent you plan to be, you should also reconsider the number of kids you want to have. When you weigh whether to have one more, you shouldn't base your decision on the lifestyle of today's typical parent. You should base it on the lifestyle you've chosen for yourself. When you live by the philosophy that parents count too, you buy your kids at a hefty effort discount. Why not stock up? Now, it's time to grapple with the strongest objection to my self-styled Commonsense Guide to Happier Parenting. In the future, your children will pay the price for your lackadaisical attitude. We all know how important parenting is, right? Energetic parenting supposedly turns children into healthy, smart, successful, virtuous, and possibly even happy adults. When young adults fall short of this ideal, we round up the usual suspects: bad, lazy, or absent parents who failed to do their job. From this perspective, a take-it-easy approach only seems better for parents. Letting your kids watch Saturday morning cartoons while you sleep in feels pleasant at the time. When 18 years of shortcuts turn your son into an unemployed dropout who spends his days playing video games in your basement, though, a single question will torment you. What have I done? I will not respond to this objection by trotting out a bunch of studies claiming that hands-off parenting leads to independence or that video games build brain cells. I don't claim to know the real way to mold your children into adults you can be proud of. My response is more modest, yet more radical. The best available evidence shows that large differences in upbringing have little effect on how kids turn out. While healthy, smart, happy, successful, virtuous parents tend to have matching offspring, the reason is largely nature, not nurture. When I say the best available evidence, I'm not talking about a handful of studies that are slightly less bogus than the competition. The best available evidence on the nature-nurture question is excellent. Twin and adoption studies aren't quite as good as controlled laboratory experiments, but many are close. Thousands of research papers have applied these methods to hundreds of controversial questions. They reach an amazing consensus about what counts for kids.